ambassadors from Toronto, who is going to share with you how he started with MuleSoft, how he learned, and how he got where he is today. Thank you.
Can you hear me good? Everyone hear me okay? Good volume? All right. All right, so just first to know the audience, who here is a coder, developer, or software engineer? Perfect. Anyone here was a coder but moved to somewhere else in the business? Oh, pretty much everybody, those two categories. Okay, so this talk is mostly geared for the current engineers. And I'm going to be talking a lot about myself and the first 15 years of my professional career as a software engineer. But the goal, hopefully, is not to tell you about myself, but to get you to think about your career path at a higher level by telling you about the choices I've made and the direction it took me. I already messed this up. In a typical large IT department, there are two career paths for a software engineer. A technical path, which is on the left, and a management path, which is down the middle. Each path has many levels. These have kind of become standard at most major Silicon Valley tech companies. The higher the level, the less people in the organization at that level. Most people will say that the higher the level, the more responsibility, but I don't think that's necessarily true. But the higher the level, the greater the greater the financial compensation. Each level has a salary band or range where you move slowly within it. At most IT corporations, the typical yearly salary increase is in the low single digits. If a company is doing well and you get a 0% raise at the end of the year, you could be in the unique situation, but generally it means that you should be worried as the company doesn't see you in their long-term plans. The graph at the bottom there, if you can't really see it. Can you move this? Okay, there it is. Yeah, the graph in the bottom there is my salary trajectory for my 7 years at a large IT corporation. I'll try not to name which one, but it's pretty easy to figure out which one it is. As you can see, it was a slow, steady increase over the 7 years. That is the low single-digit raise every single year. The only jump I had was in the middle there, and it was a promotion to the senior software level, which is the level 5. I got the numbers messed up, sorry, on the left here. It's the third one from the bottom. In the second half of this graph, I end up having the second half of this time at the corporation, I had 2 kids. And in Toronto, where I lived, there was a large cost of living increase, which includes a massive housing bubble where the average home price doubled in 7 years. So any of these typical small increases in salary wasn't enough to keep up with my growing family and cost of living. I was actually losing on my purchasing power. I explained this to being on a treadmill on the level 1 setting. I actually have to keep moving forward just to stay in the same spot. If I stand still or get no salary bump year over year, I'm actually moving backwards. So achieving only these small yearly salary increases, I knew either now or later I would have to make a move. I needed to get the salary jump that happens when you move to a higher software level. So I made a target to get to level 5, which is the staff software engineer level, and figured I needed to start working harder. There's a saying that goes, you can't improve what you don't measure, so I started using the Pomodoro technique. It's a timing method where you work completely focused for 25 minutes at a time and then take a 5-minute break. You can download the clock app on your phone. I found out that when I wasn't counting time spent in meetings, so actually fingers on the keyboard, not listening on a call, I was averaging between 4 to 8 Pomodoros a day. So that equates to 2 to 4 hours on the keyboard and not listening to a phone call. I was averaging 2 to 4 hours of focused work. My daily numbers were very inconsistent. I would have a very productive day where I would hit 8 Pomodoros, but then the very next day I would follow it up with a 4. So I aimed to try for a whole year to try to get 8 Pomodoros every single day, which equates to 4 hours on the keyboard, fingers on the keyboard, uninterrupted, undistracted coding. So this includes no checking of the emails, no answering a beep on my phone, not even a call for a meeting. First realizations that came pretty early was my lifestyle had to change. If I stayed up late doing something stupid like watching another episode on Netflix, The next day I would get to work an hour later, or I would be tired from lack of sleep and it would hurt my Pomodoro score. I had to be in bed every night at a good time so I could start the next workday early and productive. After that change, however, for a full year, I was consistently able to hit 8 Pomodoros. I actually accomplished a lot of work. I finished more projects than I ever had before. On my Scrum team, along with another team member, we had the highest by far average sprint point total. And the other person was already a staff software engineer, the level I wanted to get to. So I felt I was producing on the level needed, just without the title, yet. When the year-end review came, I was told I was doing a great job and was awarded a 2% raise. I knew that it was going to be a multi-year journey, but I still asked what my chances were for a promotion. My manager said they knew I was doing a great job, but because I was on a team that dealt with integrations with legacy software, it was tough to get my achievements visible to the higher executives who make these decisions. I was on what's called an RTB team. So at my organization, projects and teams fell into one of 2 categories: RTB, which is run the business, and GTB, grow the business. The grow the business team created new products and services. It was the company's gamble on new revenue streams. It had the biggest budget and everyone was paying attention to see their outcomes. My run the business team managed existing legacy software, keeping the systems running and doing slight improvements or additions whenever needed. As long as we didn't break anything, no one really cared about our work. I digested the frustrating news, complained a little while to anyone who would listen, and regrouped. So for the next year, I did exactly what my manager asked. I volunteered to do any project that involved other departments on top of my regular day work. I upped my Pomodoros to 8 to 10 a day, and with the extra hour added to the workday, I became the team's engagement leader and took up the role of being the team's scrum master. I brought in agile experts to help our team manage their workload more efficiently. Our team's productivity went up and stresses went down. At the end of the year, our team's engagement score had the highest increase at the whole company. Our CEO has visibility to these metrics and takes them very seriously. When the scores came out, my manager was praised throughout the company and moved into a higher position. I was excited for this year-end's review. I figured my manager was going to recognize my help in their promotion and take me with them. During the review, I was told I was doing a great job and awarded again a 2% raise. I asked my chances of moving up a level and was told about the calibration meetings. So calibration meetings are a week-long set of meetings where all the managers come together and fight over who should be promoted. A manager would toot the achievements of their team member, then another manager would bring up their team member's achievements, then everyone would argue on what person was more deserving. That person would get nominated to the director and VP's calibration meetings, who again would argue until they had their leaderboard set, and then the top people in there would get recommended for promotions to the division product leaders who approved it. So my manager told me I had a great reputation within my team and the teams I worked with, but the new directors and vice presidents needed to know who I was, as they were the ones making the final decisions. I knew the vice president of the Canadian division because he was located in my office and we had a relationship. However, I didn't report to them. All my department heads worked out of California and I was in Toronto 3 hours behind. I had a major hurdle to get visibility to them. So I digested that frustrating news, complained for a while to anyone that would listen, and regrouped. So for the next year, I worked even harder. I upped my Pomodoros to 10 to 12 a day and accepted a temporary move to another department to solve the critical GDPR compliance legislation. It had the highest availability of any project at the company. If not implemented correctly in a time, we would get fined by the European Union millions of dollars. With even more work hours I was putting in, on top of my team's assigned work, I went searching to find a problem a director or a hire had. I ended up reading about an email from about a finance director complaining about how his end-of-month process to close the books always took days when it should only take hours, costing the company time and money. This had nothing to do with my team, but it was an integration project, so I took it on. As well as I convinced my wife that to climb the corporate ladder, we would have to move to the headquarters in California. So we visited, I asked my manager and we got approval from a director that liked my work, and we visited San Diego to check out the office, visit the area, and look at houses. This year was very successful for me work-wise, but it was very bad for me mentally. Because of knowing how the calibration meetings functioned, I knew my manager could only choose one person to fight for these meetings. I constantly felt in competition with my teammates. I was 2xing their output and now trying to 3x it. I volunteered for every task that needed done. I was screaming on the inside for anyone to recognize my achievements. I also discovered the app Glassdoor, which got me talking to other employees about salaries and found out that my teammates in California at the same level were making 60% more than me. I started to resent them. I was not in a good state. Halfway through that year came a major reorganization. My director who approved my relocation to California was let go, and I was switched to a new manager. Now, not only was my move to California canceled, I needed to impress in 6 months a new manager so much that they would choose me out of the other team members to fight for in the next calibration meetings against all other the managers and be successful in their very first time attending. My plan was all upside down. I didn't know what to do. It was a common company email blast shortly after about a new hire that triggered a major change in my life. The company had been trying to jump onto the AI bandwagon to see if they could find any places to incorporate it into our products. They had just hired an outside expert to help. Nothing too unusual until I saw what position the new hire was brought in. They were placed at the principal software engineer level, and they reported directly to a senior VP. I was perplexed at how a person from outside the company, so no knowledge of our business or history of great year-end reviews, whose resume only had work experience in AI, could come in that high of a position right away, moving above countless of amazing internal people with a long history of successfully delivered projects. That is when I first discovered the difference between being a generalist and being a specialist. I once tried to count how many different programming languages, frameworks, and libraries I used over my 7 years at that major software company. I ended up stopping counting at 40. I was originally brought in of my experts with the e-commerce platform ATG, and I expanded to deliver any product or tool the marketing team needed, which included launching a homegrown content management system using a lot of Java Spring MVC. I also did quite a bit of front-end programming, turning Photoshop page layouts into code. My Canadian team was then gobbled up by a larger US team, and I was moved into integrations. This is when I built my first API using Mule, but it wasn't the only API used. I worked on Oracle Fusion middleware and Java Spring APIs. I also spent a year on a Spring Boot application that used a lot of AWS features. By the time I left, my final project was to upgrade a Java Struts application from version 1 to version 2, which are completely different. My reputation had become the person who could be used as a resource for any type of project, no matter the technology or department, and help get it done. I did everything the company asked me to do, and repeatedly that was to work with programs and languages I had no previous experience with. I even once created a web application in Node.js and have never since used that language ever again. Even though I deliver code in many different technologies, I was a novice at all of them. The response after that statement that most of you are probably thinking is that that's great because now I have experience with the technology that I can add to my resume. The only situation I can think that this is valuable in is that if every single job posting in North America required Node.js experience and they didn't care that it was only for 3 months. No disrespect if you're unemployed and having a hard time finding work. I was there too when I started my career out. However, I'm at a different stage in my life now. I have close to 15 years experience in IT, all software engineering, and the job market is really good right now. The US total unemployment rate is currently under 4%, and the IT unemployment rate is negative, meaning that there are more positions than people to fill them. The issue I have is not getting a job, it's getting a good job. What made this AI specialist jump to the top of the organization chart was that our company needed a very specific skill set, and he was an expert level at it. He was a big fish in a small pond. I, on the other hand, turned out to be an average experience at a whole bunch of skills, but expert in none. The job market was full of people like me. I wasn't unique. It wasn't that companies don't need my type. They do. Actually, they need quite a few of me. It's just that there are a lot of me's to go around, and we all fit in at the bottom of the organization chart. I'm a small fish in a big pond. If you look up at the slide, you'll see that on the left is a job posting for Amazon. The title isn't even specific. It's actually just a job level, so software development engineer. The details kind of look like they wanted Java experience, but there was a list of 10 other different things. They were looking for generalists like me who could probably be placed in any one of their many teams with any type of technology and do well. And if you don't believe me, check out what these large tech companies' hiring processes look like now. They don't even ask you specific coding questions anymore. They get you to answer these leak code logic problems. They are actually testing if you're intelligent enough to be a generalist. And look how many people applied for this job. So 58 after 9 days. No wonder they make these interview processes so long and grueling, because they have to narrow down from these large numbers. Now let me show you a MuleSoft developer posting on the right there. This is for a $100 Canadian, which is $75 US per hour job that is 100% remote. I know because it was to join a team I was already on. With 2 people applying to this job, you are guaranteed an interview, and now all you have to do is convince them that you can do the job better than one other person. When I told my manager at the big tech company that I was leaving to become a MuleSoft specialist, I was warned that if you tie yourself to one technology, what happens if no one uses that technology anymore? Well, I would counter that with, if I tie myself to one company, what happens if that company goes under? Or in my case, what if I was tying my reputation to one manager, because only a few see what you actually do and understand the quality of your work, and you get a new manager? I was in that same situation, and it did happen to me. I had 5 different managers in 7 years at this organization. So why did I choose to become why did I choose MuleSoft to become an expert level in? So for the first thing is, when I was coding websites, the average design/campaign would be live for at most 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, the page would be replaced, and my work, the ones and zeros I spent so much time on, were gone, vanished, no proof that I ever existed. Now when I release integration code, I get people thanking me for automating their manual processes that was sucking the life out of them. I'm eliminating millions of hours of time people spent compiling reports on spreadsheets and loading data manually into systems. The second reason is that integration platforms don't change very often. Once an ESB is in place and it runs well, there's no reason to replace it. There's a lot of old ESBs currently running in many organizations. Worst case is there a better product that comes along in the future and takes market share from MuleSoft, but then it would still be that old ESB that has to be kept going and maintained. The third point is that some of the other ESBs I've worked with are so frustrating to work with. You had no local development environment because they were too heavy, so constantly having to upload changed files to a shared remote environment to test. Many of them you had to shut down in the server and bring it back up for a change to take effect. MuleSoft can run on an average laptop and has a fast startup time and can do hot deployment code changes. It was also at a time open source, so you didn't have to worry about documentation, as you can just easily find out any answers yourself from the source code. And the fourth point is, I used to build apps and do custom programming for an open source e-commerce platform named Magento. It's a really good product for small retailers, mom and pop stores. All these jobs for these small businesses were usually only take a few hours, gaining me $50 here, $100 there. When you have a $20,000 a year annual price for a MuleSoft license, you know the organization has money to spend on developers to write for their platform. But also the price isn't too high that only the top Fortune 500 companies could afford it. That could make opportunities limited. So now that I chose to want to become a specialist in MuleSoft, how do I become a specialist at it? I had about 10 MuleSoft APIs or ETL processes under my belt already. But to be a specialist, I had to prove to people, not just my teammates and manager, that I was good. That's all an interview really is can I prove to the people hiring me that I can complete the work that they need done? while not being a complete nuisance. Telling them about a project I work on doesn't do much as they don't know if I did the actual work. Showing them, they wouldn't be able to understand if I showed them my beautiful MuleSoft code. So I figured maybe I could show them a Stack Overflow score. It would be an authentic score that would show that I'm capable enough to solve other people's problems. So I started answering questions on the site tagged with Mule or MuleSoft. That was going okay, but it was going slow. Often the questioner would never come back to accept my answer, so I wouldn't get any points. And I was never fast enough to answer the easy questions, and the ones left would take me a long time, as I would usually have to code the problem first to reproduce the issue, then fix it, then write up the response. I wasn't getting too many points, but I was learning a lot. Next, MuleSoft had a champions program where you get points for challenges, such as answering questions on the MuleSoft forum or finishing coding problems. There were only 8 champions worldwide, so I figured if I could get on that list, that would give me some credibility. So to get points, I completed all the MuleSoft certifications, which are so valuable for knowledge and credibility in itself, especially the integration professional. I also published an article about a challenge I had at work and how I solved it with MuleSoft. I was climbing the leaderboard quickly on my way to becoming a champion, but then the program got canceled. On the bright side, I had all the learnings, certifications, published answers, and written articles. So then I went back to answering questions on the forums, but it was taking me way too much time just to help one person. I was also struggling to take these really tough problems and tell the answer in a paragraph. The solution didn't tell the questionnaire the steps I took to figure out the problem, which I thought was more valuable than just the final line of code. So I decided to start a YouTube channel. It began with taking the most common question I was seeing on the MuleSoft forum, which is around date formatting, and I created an 18-minute long end-to-end tutorial on converting date objects to strings in DataWeave. From there, my life has been crazy ever since. MuleSoft has been super nice to me and given me a platform to speak on my experiences. I was on a developer panel at last year's Connect in San Jose. I got a 40-minute breakout session at Dreamforce 18, and now I'm here. Also, they just added me to their ambassador program, which is amazing, although it doesn't sound as good as being a MuleSoft champion. I used to apply for MuleSoft jobs with all these credentials. However, now I tend to get approached with job opportunities. This gives me more leverage to state my job requirements. It's a subtle but powerful difference between asking in an interview if I can work remotely to telling an organization I will only work for you if I work remotely. Compare that to how the salary negotiations would go with Amazon after seeing that there are 100 different applicants with the same general skill set as you. Comparing my life now to when I was feeling stressed and fighting to get a raise over 2%. In the first year after leaving to become a specialist, I more than doubled my salary. I'm turning down new job opportunities almost weekly, and money is no longer the highest factor in deciding who to work with. More important to me is the team I'm joining, how interesting the work is, and the impact of the problems I'm helping solving. It's been going so well that now I'm building my own team of specialists and moving from becoming a MuleSoft consultant to being a MuleSoft implementation company. I love what I'm doing, and I'll never go back to being a generalist again. Thank you. And if you're interested in more my tutorials, that's my YouTube channel, and any communication or talk you guys want to do, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there as well. Thanks.